we have a pretty jam-packed day today, so if I'm going a bit fast, I apologise. This is all being recorded, you'll get the video recordings, etc. And hello, please find a seat anywhere. Lewis, oh yeah, we've got plenty of seats around here. I don't think it's that controversial, but I think there may be some controversial parts in today's presentation. Now, I'm a massive fan of, you've probably heard me say this loads, but Shakespeare once said, "Nothing is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." And ever since I learned that quote, it's really changed my eyes of how I perceive things. So whenever I get pissed off at something, in like a previous version of me would be, "Oh, that's really annoying, that person or that thing," and I'd really, grind my goats about it. Grind my goats? You know what I mean. Grind my gears. But now, whenever I'm pissed off, I actually go internal and go, "Right, that's interesting, Simon. Why are you pissed off?" I've got like this inner shrink going, "Why are you getting so riled up by this?" So if you do see some controversial things today, try and, I don't know, just keep your mouth shut. Ultimately, I don't care. I'm here to teach. So, no, I'll do that later. Right, so we are going to go through the standard format, so big picture type stuff first, and then we'll get into the crypto type stuff eventually. So I always start with the big macro trends, and I think as an investor, you really do need to know what's coming down the line, whether it's 5 years away, 10 years away, because you can position yourself. We'll talk about the insidious war that's happening in Ukraine at the moment, what's happening in the markets, bigger picture. Then we'll have a nice little chat with Steve. Then a bit of a wee break. Then we'll look at on-chain and do some due diligence on some random shitcoins. Then we'll chat about crypto mining. Where's Josh? Hey, Josh. Josh is back. I think it's about 5 years since 4. Okay, I got it wrong. And then a nice hot lunch. Then talking about ETH, why it's going to be awesome. Trading risk management game. So you have some things in front of you. Don't doodle on them just yet, so just wait till after lunch. That'll be fun. Then we're going to have a chat with Claire, who's a lady that made me cry for about 3 hours straight a few weeks ago. I thought it would be interesting getting her on stage. She's really nervous. She's not here yet, so please be nice to her. Play your charts right. That was a good hit last time, so we're going to continue with that. Talk about gold and silver very quickly. Not going to spend too much time on that. And then a big Q&A. So there are some random bits of paper in the middle of your tables. If you have a question, please write them out and then hand it to Lewis at the end of each break. And then later on today, I'm going to go through all the questions. Not just myself, but the Avengers as well. And then we're going to get drunk from 1900 onwards. I'm going to get drunk. I don't know about you guys. Right, so first of all, whether you like it or not, chaos and uncertainty creates opportunity. And we are living in one of the most uncertain times in recent years. Historically, when you look at humans from, let's say, a century point of view, we are actually in a world of peace, in a time of peace. I know it may not seem that with some hot wars going on, but this is the least violent part of human species' entire history. Which is quite interesting, because the media would have you believe otherwise. But chaos does create opportunity. And what happens is that the normality that we get accustomed to disappears forever. Rules change, policies pivot, and new thinking emerges. And we're seeing all sorts of things from the World Economic Forum of, the Great Reset and all stuff like that. And a lot of people think, oh, this time it's different. We've got technology this time compared to other things. It's not. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme fricking well, normally with a sinister tone. I feel this lectern's in the way. But it's not. Nothing changes. And the real reason that nothing changes is because human nature never changes. We don't change at all. So back in sort of the 1300s, we had the Black Death, the bubonic plague. But that cleared a path for the Renaissance. We wouldn't have had that without the Black Death. Then in the 1918s, early 20s, we had Spanish flu, wiped out hundreds of millions. But that then gave way to the roaring 1920s. We now have COVID, which is basically World War III. We've literally, the last couple of years, had World War III against an invisible enemy, blah, blah, blah. We've spent trillions trying to combat it, and that's going to give way to the roaring 2020s. So the key thing here is that humans as a species, we're quite innovative, and we have technology. That's what separates us from octopus and other clever animals out there. I mean, there are many species out there which, on the intelligence staircase, are very close to us, but they don't have tech. They don't have thumbs, they don't have tech, basically, thumbs and tech. And so this is why things are only going to get better. Yes, there are going to be little pockets of your life that may get shit, your groceries are going to get more expensive in the short term, all that sort of stuff. But look at things from a decadally or generational point of view, it's amazing. So you could be really poor these days, right? But you still have access to a toilet. If you go back 100 years ago, no, maybe a bit longer than that, 130 years, most kings and queens didn't have flushing toilets. Most kings and queens only had a bath probably once a week. Whereas, like, even if you're modern day poor, you still have access and have a standard of living better than any royalty did 130 years ago and before. So tech really does help us. And you've heard me say this again, but repetition is the mother of learning. Go back to the 90s. We had one technology which was about to enter exponential growth. And we had the smallest demographic, the Gen X, that boomed that one tech, because that was the internet. Okay? And we had Generation X, teeny-weeny demographic. And they turned that one single exponential technology into the world that we are living in right now. We cannot live without the internet. There are some people that would have withdrawal symptoms if I took your phone from you for a day. Whereas now, we have the biggest demographic that's ever existed, millennials, and we have at least 10 exponential technologies, all at exactly the same point where internet was in the 1990s. So, I cannot help but think we are going to have the best time humans have ever experienced, ever, over the next 5 to 15 years. I think, over the next 3 years is going to be pretty damn shit. So we've got to buckle up and get ready. But after that, it's going to be awesome. So, yeah, it's going to be really, really good. So there's plenty to be cheerful for. It's another reason why I don't listen to mainstream news. Most people are, quite depressed and gloomy when they listen to BBC and whatever. Just zone off. I haven't listened to mainstream news in about, 10 years. It's great. So there are a few big trends happening. So is Mike here tonight? Mike Mendel? Hey, buddy. So you'll be familiar with this. I've been in sort of a networking group with Mike for a decade now, or something like that. And one of the things that we spoke about a lot, so the guy who runs it is Duncan Gledhill, and he's a big fan of signals through the noise. And I completely agree. So as a group, we're a bunch of business owners. I like to think we're progressive thinkers and whatnot, and we all come from different backgrounds. So Mike is, the founder of WordTracker, which did, Google keyword search terms before Google and all that. So he's from a very tech background, and we have all sorts of other people in that group from different things. And so we all have this big peripheral vision, right? So you and your Todd, you may have, your own little sort of ecosystem, but when you combine that peripheral vision with 10 other peripheral visions, you're going to see a lot of resonating noise, which can, you can see some signals emerge. And so I'm very aware of these signals where, and the thing that sort of piques my interest is that I'll hear of something, I go, and I'll automatically dismiss it. Our brains are very busy, right? We have to filter out all sorts of noise. But when I keep hearing a certain thing, ping, 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 I then start to take note. And so if you go back, 10 years ago, the random pingings would have been, crypto or stuff like that. And then the crypto pinging would have got louder and louder. And then now, here we are, crypto's in its still very premature stages. It's like, the tech boom of 2001. But still, we're very early. And so I love looking at massive global macro trends to see where the signal pingings are coming from. So I've got some big trends here, and I've tried to block them up into individual bits. So we have plummeting fertility rates, rapid increase of non-procreating humans, falling mortality rates, improving education, all of these things. I don't need to read them off the screen for you. But what does that all lead to? It's leading to, I'll come back to that, an aging and declining global population. Now, this whole slide, I did like an hour presentation at the last cuddle. You remember the title, I think, Gen Z, Incoming Tsunami, or whatever it's called. But the key slide, the single key slide you need to look at is that. This is literally the most telling thing. If you want to gear yourself, or gear your investments at least, and your businesses for the next 10 to 50 decades. 10 to 50 years. So the green stuff is our population. We are going to plateau in 2060, basically. Human population will plateau at around, I think, around 12 to 13 billion people by 2060. And then it's a permanent decline forever thereon, as best as we know. And the main reason for that is human population growth, as in this big spike of a line, is plummeting. So right now, the human race is only growing at 1.08%, roughly. And there's nothing that's looking like that's going to reverse anytime soon. And it's all due to these things here. And these individual points are accelerating. If you want to scare yourself, just look at global fertility rates. Again, that previous seminar speech from the last cuddle. So, aging, declining global population. So you can then sit there, and with all of these slides, I've sat there for a good 10, 15 minutes, probably every month going, right, what are the opportunities here? What is this going to lead to in the next 5, 10 years? Because if you're ever going to set up a big business, like a multi-billion-dollar business, you can't do it in something which is already booming now. You need to get in there relatively early. So, if someone can fix fertility rates, that's $1 trillion business. You just pick one little thing. But obviously, you need a lot of money in tech and a team to implement that. So we have increasing weather amplitude due to carbon emissions. Freshwater conflicts is going to be almost a certain thing in the future. Increased population in the short term, okay? In the short term. So we're basically going to be in a rising population until 2060. So the news will scaremonger everyone into believing that, the Earth is going to be overrun by humans. It's not. We're just going to go from the 8 billion people we are right now to about 12 billion, over the next 40 years, which, is a vast increase in a relatively short period of time, but it's not to stay. Increased pollution, that's, with an extra, let's say, 4 billion people coming online, popping up over the next 40 years, that will happen, and shrinking classes. So there's going to be the potential suboptimal environmental conditions for humans. Now, whether that's, rising water levels, if you want to believe that, or, it could be anything. Again, there are dozens and dozens of multi-billion-dollar businesses that you could set up just from that one slide alone. If you just want to focus on, desalination, so everyone gets drinking water, all that sort of stuff. The next one is renewable energy policies are shifting dramatically. You can see that the trend already emerging of, Europe stopping the sale of diesel and petrol cars from, was it 2035? Something like that? Depending, yeah. Sorry, 2030. Interesting. One thing to know about that is that even if you had a magic wand and made every brand new car sold today being electric right now, it will still take a good 40 to 50 years to electrify the automobile fleet. So, new car sales on a yearly basis only equates to about 1% of the cars on the road. So, yeah, even if we waved that magic wand and made every new car sold today electric, it'll still take 40 odd years to electrify the fleet because petrol and diesel cars, they last 10 to 20 years depending on how much you drive them. Yeah, don't think it's going to be a massive shift. It will be a big surge, like a continuous wave of EVs coming online. Energy storage increase, yeah. So with anything with tech, the key thing to remember is that all tech falls to gross marginal cost, okay? So what happens is that when you have a brand new tech, it's really expensive, not many people can do it, and then it gets more efficient, more people do it, etc., etc. And the cost of whatever that new tech will always try and gravitate to zero. So if you take the internet, it's tens of trillions of dollars worth of R&D, originally military R&D for decades. And now we have access to the internet for, £20 a month or whatever, and it's going to get a lot cheaper. So that's a prime example of something very awesome and very expensive becoming almost cheap. Same with data. Data used to be so expensive. Have you seen those big pictures of them, like the old floppy disks, like the original floppy disk, where it was like as tall as me, as wide as me, and it would have like 5 kilobytes worth of data, or something, or 5 megabytes worth of data. And now you can have like 1 billion of them just on a mobile phone. So data is going, is on a rapid gross marginal cost decline. So eventually the price of data will be, you can buy terabytes of data for pennies eventually, or less. EV incentives, battery type stuff. So anything about the electrification of stuff is just going to get better, density, all that sort of stuff. You've probably seen online the advent of a lot of electric VTOL aircraft, so electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Uber's trying to do that. And the sole reason we're now starting to see the sort of the sprouting of electric VTOL is because the battery density. So Elon, for many, many years, has said, we cannot have electric VTOL aircraft until we get a battery density of 400 watt-hours per kilogram. So Tesla batteries are beyond that, but Tesla batteries are 8 years in front of everyone else. And it's now catching, so the rest of the battery community are now catching up. So the average electric battery right now has a density of about 350 to 400 watt-hours per kilogram. When you get to, so that's enough for electric VTOL with an aerofoil. When you get to sort of about 450 to 470 watt-hours per kilogram, then you can have a full-on VTOL like drone, like helicopter type stuff. Whereas right now, the battery, you cannot make a helicopter right now, a good helicopter with just electric rotors. But yeah, just give it time. Give it 5 years, it'll be sorted. So it's the death of the helicopter, basically, as we know it. Helicopters will turn into drones eventually. Or you'll start to see the death of the helicopter sales. So, for example, that's a position I want to, give it 5 years. Once battery density gets to a certain point and electric VTOL companies start sprouting, I want to short helicopter manufacturers. Potentially. No. The caveat is I will short helicopter manufacturers that don't pivot onto drones. That's the key thing. And there will be incumbents. There will be helicopter manufacturers that go, screw this, we're going to stick with the jet engine, or whatever. I'm going to short the shit out of them. So, but again, it's something I can't do now, but it's up my back sleeve. My back sleeve? You know what I mean, up my sleeve. I never wear sleeves. Anyway, so basically, it's the beginning of the electrification of everything. It's going to be awesome. Then we have this. This is probably the scariest slide for me. So we have the increase of spammers due to bots now absolutely sailing past the Turing test. You all know about the Turing test? Hello, let's not embarrass the new people coming in. Hello. There are seats sporadically peppered around the place. Lewis, can we make sure there's 2 seats together? I don't want to split up this young couple. The seat's over here. There's like a spare table. Sorry. You've missed so much. I don't know how you're going to catch up. Sorry, that's quite mean of me. So basically the Turing test is a very antiquated test that needs to be changed, where it's, can a robot or a computer mimic a human so that a human won't know that it's talking to a robot? That's basically the sloppiest way to explain what the Turing test is. Well, the average spam bot is, just breezing the Turing test these days. Well, not the average, a good spam bot would. So we're getting the increase of spam. My personal social media accounts are getting cloned at least 3 to 4 times a month. And there are people in the RT community that have lost money from sending money to these spam accounts. And no matter how many times I try and say, this is a spam account, it happens. So you just got to be super, super careful. We're seeing a massive decline of trust in mainstream media. In the US, if you look at it by amount of active daily or monthly viewers, which media outlet is the biggest in the US? Who or what has the most amount of active listeners on a monthly basis in the US right now? Nope. Nope. Did you say Joe Rogan? Correct. Joe Rogan is the biggest mainstream, he's now mainstream, is the biggest mainstream media outlet in the US right now. He has more viewers and listeners than I think most of the mainstream media together, combined. It's huge. No wonder he's being shut down. So, is that Ellie? I can't see, it's quite bright. Oh, hey, Ellie. Yeah, Joe Rogan, it's crazy. And why is that? Because people don't trust, CNBC and all that sort of stuff. We have roughly 3 billion more people coming online over the next 3 or 4 years. That's nuts. Because we have a huge rising middle class in developing worlds. India in particular, India and China and parts of Africa. And so the cost of smartphones is going to go down. When that happens, all of these people, not all, a big chunk of those people are going to get online. I feel sorry for these people because guess what? These are the 3 billion people that are going to get spammed the hell out of, right? Like if you go back to the 1990s, the average person could have got sucked in by a random, SMS scam or, hey, I'm a prince from Nigeria. I just won the lottery, but I need you to collect it for me. All those sort of, these 3 billion people that have never been on the internet, they're going to get scammed the hell out of. There's a business there. Protect the rising 3 billion from spammers. That is legitimate business there. You could turn yourself into an NGO. Your revenue will come from countries, not people. And there you go. Boom. Cybersecurity is woefully lacking hacking skills, unfortunately. I had another chat with my hacking friend who, by the way, every quarter or so, I'm like, hey, do you want to come on stage and talk at the Cuddle? He's like, nope, never coming to one of your events, mate, too public. And like he's proper, he used to be paid to hack banks. And he once hacked Barclays Bank, stole 20 million quid, put it in his own personal Barclays Bank account. And he's got a picture on his wall because he printed out a screenshot and hung it on his wall. And then he was forced to give it back. So, so he knows his shit. But he's saying that there's new hacking methods which are coming online, which no one can really fix at the moment. And we live in a very fragile, globally dependent, or we are internet-dependent species at the moment. Our whole lives run around the internet, basically. Which means, this is why it's scary for me, there is an inevitable global pandemic coming, but for cyber. And the reason I'm so certain of that is because the World Economic Forum is constantly talking about it. So just like the World Economic Forum was constantly talking about an actual, a virus pandemic, a biological pandemic, and guess what? It happened. The World Economic Forum they're already calling it cyber COVID. It will happen, and that scares the shit out of me because I don't know what to do about it. I have really interesting chats with my wife, Ellie. We're always talking about the future and how we can insulate ourselves. So one of our little plans, I haven't shared this before, one of our plans is to have an internet-proof business, at least. Because I was thinking, holy shit, if this happened today, all of us would be fucked, obviously, screwed. But I want a way to make sure that we still have some sort of income, because all my businesses are basically internet-based. So what we want to do is open up a massive food wholesaler. Wholesale. So we want to buy farms, so we grow our own food. We want to have a massive wholesale sort of food depository, so we want to create our own food surpluses, and then a little farm shop will be connected by it. So if all shit really did hit the fan, at least we've got food for my family, and plus, the play there will be, if it gets really bad, the government will come in and buy our huge stockpiles of food. That's the only way I can sort of insulate it. Not that I want to get into food, but it will be stuff like, non-perishable food to a degree. But I don't know. Solar would help, I guess, if you had energy, then that's some sort of income. But hey, this is a scary side for me. A lot of my energy is going into thinking around this. And also, guess what? We're going to have the splinternet. So in China, there's already the split internet. You have the internet, then you have Chinese internet. If you're an average person in China going onto the internet, you're seeing a completely different world than what we see on our phones. They cannot access Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. They cannot see nearly all of the websites that you could probably list off of your head. They have the split internet, a very highly censored internet where it's actually really hard just to get a VPN and look outside. You have to go, you have to go on the dark web, open up that Tails, and then, get on the dark web to try and see what's out there. And guess what's happening? When cyber COVID hits, they're just going to be like, oh, we're going to have to prevent this, and everyone's going to have a vaccine, a computer vaccine, and they're going to stop us from, I don't know. Where's my tinfoil hat gone? I hope I'm not. I really hope I'm wrong. So, next slide. This is more prosperous. Miniaturization. Tech just gets smaller, typically. Physical tech gets smaller. So, this is really going to help with drones. So, if you can miniaturize all the components of a drone, then eventually you have a drone which you can barely see, the size of a fly. In fact, that already exists, but smaller than a fly. There are. So I heard rumblings of this about a decade ago, where intelligence agencies were working on drones about the size of a fly or smaller than a fly, and it was meant for assassinations, where they would have this little fly, they'd fly it into the room, and then fly it into someone's mouth, and it would release a neurotoxin. Boom. It's like, shit. And that was like a decade ago. God knows where the tech is now. So miniaturization is scary, but it's also really good. Miniaturization will help with medicines and stuff like that. Having bots that swim around your bloodstream, detecting bad things and breaking them down from an atomic level. What else is here? Space tech. Yeah, you all know my thoughts on Elon and all that sort of stuff. But long story short, tech explosion on multiple fronts. It could get scary with all of this. Skynet was actually pretty accurate to a degree. Let's move on. Now, this is really what I'm excited about. The plummeting cost of the human genome sequencing. You can now sequence your own genome for $1,000. Unbelievable. It used to cost $100 billion to sequence one genome. As in the human, one genome. That's now $1,000. Eventually, if you just had a current cadence of progression, you'll be able to sequence your own genome from your mobile phone for a couple $100 with an app and an attachable sensor of some sort, like a blood platelet reader or whatever. That's amazing. So you can then personally tailor your own healthcare based on you. Healthcare these days is like bland and general. It's like, oh, you're a human, so humans tend to do, that need this. Well, some people have different ailments and different needs. So if you know your own body, then I think that's pretty good. Like I remember I forgot, they call him Indian Elon. I forgot his name. He's an Indian billionaire. And he spent his life trying to get rid of his pot belly. And he said this openly on a podcast. And he did every health kick, every diet, everything he could possibly find out until he sequenced his own genome. And he realized that he actually needed carbs. So for most of his health, crusade, he was, eliminating carbs, blah, blah, blah. And apparently due to his internal biome, like he actually needed carbs. And so he started eating chips and, potatoes and stuff. And it really helped him. So we all get leaner in different ways. But the really crazy thing is CRISPR. Like this is a backyard thing at the moment. There's a bloke in the US who's made bioluminescent dogs in his backyard. He started off by making bioluminescent sperm, dog sperm, and now he's got glow-in-the-dark dogs. This is not made up. And he did this 6 years ago. I'm not joking. Now, here's the crazy thing which really gets me excited. If you go back to the 60s and 70s, there was this brand new virgin landscape which no one knew anything about, and it was called coding. Coding, just ones and zeros. Computers are a new fad at the time, and then you had whiz kids like Steve Wozniak who could just code, and you had Bill Gates who could code. Well, all these early coders are modern-day billionaires and, deca-billionaires even. CRISPR is exactly the same thing. It's this virgin landscape now which no one really knows how to code, but if you can nail coding on CRISPR, as in know how to code biology, so to speak, you will be the future Bill Gates, the future Steve Wozniak, etc. And the cool thing is it's open source pretty much. Now, pharma will obviously try and stamp this out big time, because if CRISPR tech is out there for the masses, just like coding is, like anyone can learn how to code right now. You just go online, you can teach yourself, blah, blah, blah. Well, big pharma will not want that to happen with CRISPR. They will not want the general populace to be able to teach themselves how to code in CRISPR, or use CRISPR tech to code yourself. So they'll try and stamp that out, no doubt, just like they banned human cloning and back in the day and all that sort of stuff. But I think this basically means all disease disappears when you can recode yourself. Elon even said, like, with normal progression, within about 10 years, you could just code yourself to turn into a butterfly if you wanted, literally. And he wasn't joking. And the other CRISPR scientists said, yeah, you literally can do whatever you want when you understand how to manipulate RNA. So this is the birth of genetically enhanced humans and better healthcare, basically, and more accessible healthcare. So this is awesome. It's like you got a hereditary disease, great. You can just I'm going to code it out for me. Go to a clinic on Harley Street. I don't want to be short-sighted anymore. Beep, 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 beep. Done. Obviously, it's not going to be like that, but maybe. I think it's awesome. This one's interesting. Dwindling food supplies, food processing plants all around the US suddenly blowing up and catching fire, cattle suddenly dying. The whole ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So it's basically the banner that everyone is going around these days. For example, most hedge funds and funds these days won't invest in a company unless it ticks all the ESG boxes. Is it carbon neutral, environmental, social, governance, all that sort of type of stuff. Whether you like it or hate it, it doesn't matter. You've got to get with it. If you want to succeed in business, moving forward, you have to jump through the ESG hoops. The increasing number of vegans, vegetarians, unsustainable food supply chains, it is silly having 1,000 air miles for an avocado, or stuff like that, or bananas grown in South America, flown to Thailand for packaging, and then flown to the UK. I mean, that's just silly, isn't it? And combined with ESG stuff, all the food supply stuff, and the rising population scaremongering, unfortunately, it's the inevitable global food demeating and insectification. I made those two words up, TM. I'm pretty sure, I've never heard of demeating or insectification, but it's what's happening. We're already going through a demeating phase. The amount of vegans and vegetarians has shot up. I myself have not had beef or pork in about 6 years, maybe 7 years now. But that's not really due to this, it's other reasons. But also, we're now, unfortunately, and it's going to take a long time for me to get on board with this, the insectification of our food. The World Economic Forum are really keen for us to start eating insects because it's sustainable food, it has high amounts of protein, all that sort of stuff. In China, parts of China eat insects just as, like we'd eat a Kit Kat. But I think it's going to take a long time. I think it'll take a while to change our beliefs until I'm snacking on a cockroach. But I think it's going to be subtle. It'll be like, here's this new food, it's really tasty, and it's got ant protein in it, or something like that. It's coming, okay? There's $1 billion industry here if you set up an insect food company. Right, the West is screwing up in so many facets. I could talk for 2 hours straight on how the West is basically shooting themselves in each foot, each arm, and the head eventually. And what's happening is really horrible way to think about it. But about 10 years ago, China started making big moves. And what they're effectively doing, or what they've done, is they had the US on the floor, they've put their foot on the US's head, and they're now shooting their own foot. So they have screwed themselves over in some degrees, but honestly, it's just a matter of time before the rising East overtakes the Western hegemony, so to speak. The US is on its decline, and China is growing fast. Here's a scary stat. Over the next 10 years, China is projected to have an economy 3 times the size of the US. I find that hard to get my head around. 3 times the size. At the moment, the US and Chinese economy are pretty level pegging. It was one article, so bear in mind that was one data source, so I'm not going to take it as gospel. But when you read around it, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, there's a trend here. China is going to overtake the US in every way. And like you may think, okay, but they'll never have a bigger military as the US. But the thing is, when you, warfare, if you're to take hot warfare and hot weapons and stuff like that, no one can go toe-to-toe against the US with its, 18 aircraft carriers, thousands of attack aircraft, all that sort of stuff. But if you're a rising superpower, what are you going to do? You're not going to try and compete against that toe-for-toe. You're going to have asymmetric warfare. So you're going to come up with very cheap solutions to sink aircraft carriers. So a battle group, which is an aircraft carrier, 2 attack submarines, and a support fleet of about 12 ships, that's tens of billions of dollars. So if I was China, okay, I'm going to create a weapons system that can neutralize a whole battle group. It will be swarm drones, basically. Simple. All I would then do is plow as much money into hacking, so asymmetric warfare, hacking and swarm drones. There's no way a battle group can shoot out, 5 million drones. No way. And that's what the West is doing. And by the way, North Korea is doing the same as well. North Korea has one of the most advanced hacking teams on the planet. They've just plowed people think they're plowing their money into nuclear power. It's not. Hacking, cyber warfare is where North Korea are, just like South Korean gamers are like the gods of the world, the gaming world. When Migs and I play Age of Empires every night, we're like, shit, there's an Asian, we know we're going to lose. I'm not being racist, I'm Asian myself. But generally, when you come across an Asian online, you're going to lose. And this is standard. I wish I had a laser thing. A laser. Actually, I think I do. Let's see if this works. I bought my clicker today, but I've lost the USB dongle. I don't know where it's gone. So hopefully my laser works. Hey, yes. So this is nothing new. This little bell curve here. This has lasted a good 2,000 years, and every global superpower goes through this. You have some sort of new world order. So this is basically China in the 1970s, where they were like, right, we've had 500 years of falling. We need to sort ourselves out. And that's what they've been doing for the last 50 odd years. But where the US is right now is on the decline. We as the West are around here, whereas China is sort of getting up to here. And these next 2 slides, or a couple of slides, will show us that. So let's start with the UK, this big black line. We had one of the longest reigning superpower titles ever, basically. We were the Dons for centuries, literally centuries. That ended in the late 1900s. The US quickly came along. But look at this. So China has been falling for, best part of 600 years. And now they're massively accelerating. So this, by the way, this crossover, whenever you have this crossover, you always have cataclysmic wars. World wars, or maybe not even world wars, but horrible wars. So I think for me, this clashing of horns is going to be Taiwan, basically. I don't think there's anything we can do to stop China from taking Taiwan. And if I was a military general in the US or whatever, they've been wargaming this for a good decade now. Literally, the best solution is to do nothing. The moment you try and interfere with Taiwan, well, Taiwan cannot be saved. That's the first thing. You speak to any general that's wargamed this, and I've spoken to a couple, you cannot stop the Taiwan from losing. So that's almost a cert. What the war planners or the war gamers or the generals basically, like, how many people do we let die? That's basically the question. So it's sort of, but then war always ties in with political posturing. It's like, oh, if you do nothing, how's that going to look politically? It's just a big cluster mess. So that's the simplified thing. So we have these changing of the guards, and right now, I mean, it's such an exciting time to be alive, isn't it? Yes, there's loads of shit, but don't forget all the good stuff I've talked about today. We love to focus on the negative. So where are the opportunities? They're freaking everywhere, which is why I'm a big fan of business. Like, if you have the skill of business, and I'm not saying I've got the skill of business, I don't. I'm very small fry, but it's a self-improvement journey. It's a never-ending journey, and so on the way up here. So I had like almost a 4-hour drive up here, and I knew. So these first bunch of slides are my weakest part of the day. Okay, I'm basically just a trader, and I was thinking, right, it's all very well I'm saying there's opportunities everywhere. I'm pretty sure people want some, a bit more of a nugget. So I spent 4 hours just thinking of random business ideas, and I just quickly created a list. So apologies for I haven't really, made it fancy or pretty. I've just done a big list. So positivity products. Put it this way, if you pre-2019, 25% of the US population were on antidepressants. 25%. And that's pre-COVID. Guess what it is now? 45%. Almost half of all Americans are on antidepressants right now. That's nuts. There's 319 million US citizens? What's 45% of that? I can't do maths. More than the population of the UK for sure. So I actually think positivity products are going to be pretty handy. And all of these things I'm about to list, you can make a multi-billion-dollar business in each little thing that I'll show. I'm not saying you have to do all of them or even any of them. It's just, I just want to prod your brain a bit, because who knows what that may lead to, because we all have our own ecosystems. As I said earlier with the signals, my little tech ecosystem or my peripheral vision I'm trying to impart to you, or then combined with your own knowledge, etc. Self-sufficiency skills and activities. So we've seen a massive increase in DIY over the lockdown periods. And because people aren't going on holiday as much, people are learning new skills. So self-sufficiency type stuff, gardening, I don't know, learning. I'm a prime example. I took up FPV droning, where you put on a headset, you look through the camera of the drone, and I thought, that would be cool. I've seen drone racing, and then got my drone, took hours to set up, and in the first 10 seconds, smash it into a million pieces. It's 500 quid wasted. And then okay, I now need to learn how to fix it. Droning is all about fixing your freaking drone. So I've learned how to solder, heat shrink, basic electronics. Now Ellie comes to me, I got this thing that's broken, and she knows I can take it to bits and solder the things. So I'm actually all right at electronics now, which is crazy because I spent all my life not being able to put up a shelf. My wife still will not let me forget when I put up my first shelf about 10 years ago. It lasted long until she put something on it, basically. It held itself up, not anything else. But yeah, I got relatively good at electronics, which for me is like crazy because I'm useless at pretty much everything. Psychedelics. This is a huge industry. They're already legalizing cannabis in parts of the US, other parts of the world, but also psilocybin. Huge studies have shown that psilocybin is just awesome in in pretty much every way. If you're a psychotherapist, I mean, there's been vast studies of psychologists using just one basically trip, and they're saying it's doing 5 years worth of repairs. And there's a guy called Paul Stamets, who is like the god of mushrooms. Please, YouTube. Watch it, the two Joe Rogan interviews of Paul Stamets and Joe Rogan. it'll blow your mind up. And you're saying, over studies from the 1960s, it's shown that adults that have had at least one trip in their life, so basically had at least 5 grams of magic mushrooms, had one trip, are 25% less violent than people that haven't. And he was trying to say that, it should be, he was like, if I was head of a civilization, I'd make it mandatory law that every 18-year-old on his birthday would have one magic mushroom trip, because they'd be much more chilled out. It seems funny, but just look at just when you get down that psychedelic route, it's fascinating. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I then spent a couple of years microdosing. So microdosing, I did it for mental acuity purposes. You've seen the film Limitless, the magic pill turns you into crazy. I was seeking that because I went through the whole nootropics thing and self-optimization route, etc. Had my blood work tested every 6 months. I did the whole thing for a few years, and it's fascinating. And I've always had this mental fog. If anyone that's been around, Lewis especially, I come into a team chat and he'll see me stuttering along like I can't talk sometimes. It's because I've always got this mental fog around me. And then I did everything, literally all the amount of nootropics and stuff. The only thing that worked, and I swear most of it is just bullshit, just, placebo. That's another topic in itself. Placebo is strong. Microdosing shrooms. So you don't, psilocybin. You take literally 1/4 of a gram, so you don't feel anything. But the psilocybin has neurogenesis results. So it helps stimulate new neural pathways, so synaptic connections. It's fascinating. Big industry, psychedelics in the future. Intra-country getaways and adventures, that's the whole, people are holidaying in their own country more these days. So, I wouldn't say $1 billion industry there, but Airbnb stuff in the UK has gone nuts. The prices of stuff on Airbnb is just ridiculous. Rent out a little box for $3,000 a week or something. Health and wellness, I think all this is pretty similar. Marketing, oh my God. Since the Apple-Facebook fight with iOS 14, 15, can't remember. And not just that, marketing CPA, so cost per acquisition, as in the amount of money it costs to get a new customer, has gone sky high in every form of marketing. Whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Google, Facebook, it is sky high. And because I've had a whole bunch of different businesses in different industries, I know it wasn't just localized to just one industry. It was across so especially if you have a retail business. So I had a flotation center in Norwich, and it used to, a flotation session was £55, right? But it would cost me, if I was to market it would cost me about £200 to £300 to get a new customer in. So we'd then have to put a lot of effort in getting them onto the float club and make sure that they came for more. But it's absolutely nuts. So people think that they can, I'm going to set up something, 20 quid a month, whatever, I'll just do some marketing. If you've got like a 20 quid a month subscription-based plan, it's going to cost you 300-400 quid to get a new customer. And that's, it's really, really hard at the moment. CubeSats. So space tech is, I'm all over the place with these ideas. Space tech is getting really, really cheap. So ignoring SpaceX, there's loads of companies which are popping up, which you can literally get a little box, just something like this. Have your own satellite, and it'll be something like $5,000, 100 grams? Can't remember. But you can basically get a little box like this, whizzed up into space for about 50K right now. So you can become your own telecoms type company. I don't know what you would put in the CubeSats exactly. But in fact, here's a quick prize. What is the name of that New Zealand company, that space company? Does anyone know off the top of their heads?
The Rocket Lab.
That's it. You now have a bottle of Courvoisier. Chuck it. Knock him out. That's it. So there's loads of companies that are doing that now. Solar installation. So solar is going to be big in the future. An easy one is that you could start training up your solar installation people now. Like if you've got like a failing building company or something like that, or satellite installation company, try, maybe repurpose your engineers to solar installation, because the amount of solar capacity coming online over the next few years is going to be huge. EV repair brand, why not? EVs are going to be a big thing in the future, and they're really hard to tinker with or fix if they do go wrong. So if you have a non-Tesla car which goes wrong, you're sort of screwed at the moment. And most garages won't even touch you. So I had to MOT my wife's car recently, and loads of companies wouldn't do it. And even with the company that did do the MOT, she was like, oh, don't like doing Teslas. I'm like, yeah. So a lot of car mechanics, they're scared of EV stuff. Well, why don't you just create the EV fixing company or whatever, and be known as the company to go to when you have an issue with your electric car? I mean, that's so easy. Metaverse, Rightmove, and amalgamators. So it is literally just a matter of time. I've said this many times. Rightmove needs to be disintermediated, and you will be able to buy a property online in under 5 minutes for bugger all fees. But also, basically, I think the metaverse is massively overhyped at the moment. The metaverse will not work until we have a neural implant. I'm pretty sure of that. Everyone's getting really hyped up about it, but just think about it. I've bought the highest end VR headset pretty much every year since 2014. And they are all shit. Even now, I've got a Reverb G2 right now, which is one of the best you can get. It's horrible. It's this massive clunky thing. It weighs a lot. It's shit. You've got barn door effect. It's like looking through two bog rolls. The FOV is rubbish. Human FOV, so field of vision, is about 270 degrees. First things first, you really can't get that full immersion experience unless you've got a VR headset with at least a 270-degree field of view with much better resolution. And so I think the metaverse is going through the hype stage at the moment, but the tech hasn't caught up yet. And it won't catch up. And I think Elon is going to be the person that really unlocks the metaverse. Because I think it will be a long time until we have swimming goggle-sized VR headsets with proper FOV, with really good, human life resolution. I think it will be a good 10 years. But within that time frame, we'll have BMI, so brain-machine interfaces. So the real metaverse experience is when you have a little neural implant and you go, boop, and I'm now in VR. That's the way forward. So I think Elon will shock the world when Neuralink gets really moving. He'll be like, oh yeah, and by the way, I've created Ready Player One. Just, or here's the infrastructure. Someone go and code up Ready Player One type thing. I don't think it will be headsets and stuff like that. I think it will be, because if you go down the VR route, looking at it from a first principles point of view, you're hindered in so many ways. To have a proper, let's say Magic Wand, I now got a really good VR headset. Okay, how do I interact with the world? You need a full haptic bodysuit. That's going to get incredibly sweaty. And by the way, you sweat loads in VR. Loads. Even in a cold room, your face will be sweating. So even if you wave loads of magic wands, you still need a full haptic bodysuit. And don't forget, the porn industry is going to drive the VR world. So you need a full haptic bodysuit with like a flesh dummy type thing. I know it sounds crude, but gambling, porn, and drugs, boom the internet. Don't get me wrong, gambling, porn, and drugs will boom VR as well. So online casinos and stuff like that, I think it's flawed. It's a bit like, all autonomous car manufacturers using LiDAR for their full self-drive type of stuff. It's completely inefficient. It has to be a BMI. You have to just click yourself and then you're in virtual reality. Then you don't need the whole body, haptic suits and all that bollocks. So, yeah, and obviously crypto has gone crazy with metaverse, and they're buying, real estate on Decentraland and stuff like that. Here's an easier version. I think and the tech's already out there for this. 3D scan yourself. You stand in, I've seen them. You stand in like a little X-ray thing, and it just stand there like that for a few minutes. Lasers spin around you. You then have a 3D, printout of you with all your measurements, etc. and then just have a metaverse shop. So scan yourself, all your dimensions, etc. You'll then have a digital Siam. I'm keeping my own scan of myself, but then hopefully they're shops, and then you can go, right, I want new clothes, and then you pick this designer, and then boom, clothes designs, etc. For me, just show me crypto T-shirts and stuff like that, I'll buy it. But stuff like that, yeah. So if you scan your house, scan yourself, and then all of a sudden you can like interior designing, all that sort of stuff. That's easy, and that will be a nice interim before whilst tech catches up. 3D printing, yeah, all that. So I've talked a lot about that, and flying school VR. So this is not just okay. For years, so if you want to learn how to fly, it is the most inefficient industry out there ever. Honestly, it is ripe for disrupting. And if I could be asked, I could destroy that whole industry very quickly. So if you want to get your private pilot's license, let's say for a helicopter, you want your helicopter private license, it's going to cost you 20 to 30K, depending on how fast you do it. If you do it in like 2 months, it'll be like 16 grand, but the longer you take to do it, the more money. But you literally have to go to the flying school, get in the helicopter, yada, yada, yada. There's ways you can streamline, and you may not get on with your instructor. You may, especially in the UK, the weather is shit, so you'll get CanX and all that sort of stuff. With the advent of Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, they've basically just taken pictures of the whole planet. And if you haven't seen it, just YouTube it. The visuals are just amazing. You can fly anywhere. The physics engine is shit, so it's completely unrealistic there, but it is getting better. Like, there's no reason why you can't have a VR rig, not even on, you could do it in VR, but you just have a TV or whatever, and you can gamify the learning stuff. So just like with, video game tutorials, it'd be like, right, this is how you turn the aircraft left, do this. And it'll know via the parameters if you're being too jerky or too soft or too hard, whatever. And so there's a very easy way that you can lobby the CAA, the Campaign Against Aviation, Civil Aviation Authority, to allow certain VR training to be approved at flight hours. And you could take that whole industry from say 20K to get your license down to 3K, and there's a few other things I want to do when I've got piss off money and I'm bored. So I'll probably do that sometime. But here's another one. Haptic suit VR training for any motor school. So you can do that now. You can have a full haptic suit, put a VR headset on, and then you'll be in a, you can get, let's take martial arts, okay, for example. You could get a good martial arts instructor to code up every move, blah, 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 and then the person at home puts on the suit and then go, right, I'm going to learn how to punch. And the parameters of your movement, too loose, too wide, whatever. You can learn any motor skill with a haptic suit in VR. I think that's going to be awesome. I keep clicking the wrong clicker. Any existing biz or model, can it be run cheaper with robots? Cool. If you've got a certain robot, can you then go, right, I've got these types of tech, go up and buy companies which you can just really pivot. I need to hurry up. Proper headhunting for ambitious startups. So here's where everyone goes wrong with an ambitious project. They go from very little business experience or no business experience. They've got a great idea. I'm going to change the world with this billion-dollar idea, blah, 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 and they fail. And then eventually some proper business owner will come along with a bit of know-how, some resources, and go, oh, that's a pretty cool idea, and then make it work. I mean, there's countless stories of people screwing up, but the idea is right. The way that you do this, and I've analyzed this in depth, the way you do a proper business is you need to phase yourself out from day one. That's basically what you need. You need to basically, so if you let's say you've got an ambitious idea, what you need to do is go and headhunt the C-suite. So you need to go and, I don't know, let's give an example. Let's say you want to have a fleet of autonomous taxis, let's say. Well, let's say I want to do that with Steve. What we need to do is, basically, we know nothing about that industry, so we have to pinch people from Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, all these types of things, create a nice C-suite. So part of the setup is literally just getting the team to pre-sign up. with all the right contracts, you divvy up all the shares straight away. And then once you've got the C-suite and your pitch deck, you then need to go pitching. So you then need to know how to pitch, who to pitch it to raise your seed funding. And with stuff like that, with big chunky projects, if you've got the right team, seed funding can be 1 to 5 million quid, where normally seed funding is like 50 grand to 200 grand. But so you won't get the 1 to 5 million quid seed funding until you have a good C-suite. And then once you've got that, that team needs to be able to execute. And I promise you will not be the person to execute it. I am not the person to execute the next big crazy business that we do. You need that. You need to headhunt properly. Wall Street disintermediation. So a lot of people think the world's best traders are always in London or New York. It's not the case these days. You could have some whiz kid in India who is really super good but doesn't have the resources or whatever. So with the whole copy trading type stuff, it is really sort of opening up the landscape for the average Joe. But there's an opportunity here where you could set up like an umbrella for a fully regulated fund, which is all FCA regulated, etc., and then just offer your umbrella to really good traders. That's a bit tricky. I could go on about that one, but sorry, I want to chat with Steve about that, actually. So, shared home ownership needs to be revolutionized. And crypto really does help that. There is no reason why you have to own 100% of the house that you live in. No reason. It needs to be more like a limited company where you can buy, say, 25% of the house, or the house is all tokenized up. You buy 25% of the house. It comes along with a shareholders agreement, and you have just enough amount of equity and correct shareholder agreements where you have the full, rights of the homeowner. So you can change the house. It's like you owned it. You can live in it and change the shelves and all, whatever. But there'll be that nice, sweet spot where you only own 25% of the house. Because I promise you this: over the next 10 years plus, house prices will decline permanently, forever. I think we've got another 5 to 10 years where you could be, still sucking the remnants of that gravy train that property has been for the last 20 years. But it's game over, especially with 3D construction printing imminently closing in on you guys. It's game over. So it has to move more to a shared home ownership type of stuff. Geothermal, it is absolutely mind-boggling how the world is not going more into geothermal. It doesn't matter where you are on planet Earth, you drill deep enough, you will hit hot rock. The moment you hit hot rock, you have unlimited energy for the next billion years at least, until the sun expands and the oceans boil. We've got about 1 billion years left on Earth until the oceans boil. And some of the only things which, have unlimited energy is geothermal and solar. They are the two things. The reason why Iceland has an energy surplus is because it's literally in the middle of a tectonic fault. The two tectonic plates are shifting apart, which means they can hit hot rock way shallower than if we were to drill, let's say, in the UK. But with our drilling tech that we already have from the oil industry, it is not hard. It just, policymakers and legislation just needs to shift a bit to make it more juicy, if that makes sense. Hell, we can, fracking, we've got the tech already, where you literally drill 10,000 feet underground, you then drill 10,000 feet sideways, you then fracture up everything with highly pressurized water. We have the technology as well already. Geothermal needs to be something which we push. Nuclear, geothermal, and solar is easy wins. And nuclear is the sort of the stopgap. Paper straw, whoever invented the paper straw evidently didn't ever use a paper straw. Is it just me? I hate paper straws. It just goes to mulch in your mouth. There must be a way that you can, recycle metal at mass scale, turn them into metal straws and metal cutlery really cheap. There's so much landfill and so much metal being just dumped. There must be a way that you can clean it, recycle it, turn it into metal straws. Honestly, I hate paper straws. Invasive species utilization. I haven't seen this yet, but there must be a way that you can use invasive species and repurpose them. I think there's one company already that's doing, I think I've spelt carp wrong there actually. Carp, the fish. So,
it doesn't have
Yeah, it doesn't have the E. Sorry, I was thinking of carpe diem. I don't know why I put an E there. So in some countries, you have carp invading the local ecosystem. Well, I think there is a company that is using that surplus carp as dog food. I thought, amazing. And so I think it's just a matter of time before we start doing stuff like, ant protein and other invasive species and just using them for something else. Instead of just killing them, use them. Boring tech. So Elon has 100x the cost of drilling already. It used to be something like $100 billion per mile. Or was it, no, $5 billion. I can't remember. It was literally tens of billions of dollars to just drill a mile. Now he's got it down to $10 million a mile. It's absolutely unbelievable. And it's still shrinking. So his boring technology is getting much better. And eventually we'll have boring tech where we can buy those drillers and it won't be expensive to create vast subterranean dwellings. There's already scientists saying that when you drill deep enough, you can do pretty much anything you want and not affect the surface. And so there's some crazy plans where you can drill 5,000 feet down, which isn't that far, to be honest, detonate huge warheads, won't create earthquakes, and then all of a sudden you have these huge cavities underground. Cool. What could we do with a huge cavity underground? We could live in it. We could do all sorts of stuff with it. So I think subterranean dwellings are pretty cool. And if we don't use it, we can always use it on Mars. Pretty sure that's the reason Elon set up the Boring Company, not for, alleviating congestion in LA. I think it's just to create his Mars cities underground. Self-optimization, talked about that, telomere extensions, all that sort of stuff. Miniaturization of everything, drone optimization, duration and signals, that's the key thing. As a drone flyer myself, it's always the duration and always the signal. My drone, I can fly a good 2 miles away on FPV, and it's pretty cool. But with the types of drone I fly, I've got 4, maybe 5 minutes worth of life because it's a high-powered drone. You have the other drones that last in half an hour, but yeah. I've had thoughts of, instead of having 5G connection to the, why not put a 4G receiver in? So anywhere there's 4G signal, I can then control it. And then I was thinking, what? Eventually Starlink coverage will be miniaturized. So instead of having a big dish, which has Starlink, you can have a little dish that you can put on a drone, and then you can, I don't know. There's all sorts of things. But the key thing with that is that pipeline and wire inspection is still done by helicopter. Nuts. There are companies making sweet, sweet cash by doing pipeline inspection and wire inspection. They literally fly a helicopter low level and an engineer flying from pole to pole going around. It's so expensive because these helicopters they use are single, sometimes twin turbine engines. It's $3,000 to $5,000 an hour of, you do that with a drone, automated. So you lose the 2 humans straight away. Easy, that's an easy one. I need to hurry up because this is getting too long. CRISPR, self-upgrading, talked about, eventually there could be some sort of repository, like a cookbook, how to upgrade yourself. Did anyone ever look at the Jolly Rogers handbook as a kid? Yeah? Crazy stuff, right? The Jolly Roger handbook was nuts. It was how to create anything from booby traps to really dodgy stuff. It's now illegal, I think. But eventually there will be a CRISPR Jolly Rogers handbook where, you want a third boob? Go for it. I don't know. So I sort of played with celebrity bonds. So, and I haven't done it yet, but you could start buying up esports players and teams. So a lot of sports companies, they do what's called a celebrity bond, where you take a big sports star like LeBron James, and Nike will do a celebrity bond on LeBron and go, right, we're going to pay you $200 million up front, but everything in your life we now earn. So or your salary in the future, or your merchandise, or anything that you earn is now ours. That's called a celebrity bond. You can do that with esports. Esports is the biggest rising sports thing in the world at the moment. So you can start being like an esports talent agency and managing company. Big money there. Sensor efficiencies, we have dumb factories all over the world. It's just a matter of time until we have smart factories. Honestly, if I had a factory, I would want Internet of Things sensors all over the place so I can monitor stress, strain, heat, and moisture, all connected up so me as the head engineer can just see it all on an iPad Oh, that motor's getting too hot. Let's go and fix it before it breaks. All that sort of stuff. Factories are dumb at the moment. Yeah, Internet of Things, Internet of Everything sensors. Oh yeah, make the sensors. I mean, this is going to be a massive thing. Just set up the manufacturing company that makes the freaking sensors. Beekeeping kit for beginners. Beekeeping is actually on the rise, which is amazing because bees are awesome. But it's a bit of a pain. There's so many things you have to learn. I'm slowly getting into it. But it would be really handy if an absolute noob like myself would go, okay, here is good beekeeping hive type thing. Here are the bees, you put it in. Like the thing that kills bees are the mites that basically eat the bees alive. And Paul Stamets, the mushroom guy, has already created this bee hive that naturally deters all these mites. So if you have these sort of mushroom hives, it keeps the bees super healthy, and the bees live twice as long, which is amazing. And there's also a tap, so you don't need to, move the bees and take them out and mess around with them. You literally just go up to it, turn the tap. There we go, done. So you have super healthy bees that last twice the age, and you just get your honey. That would be really handy. It's quite expensive at the moment, though. Floating structures. So if there are rising sea levels in the future, then guess what? Floating structures will start to boom. Building cities and airports and stuff on water. The Maldives are already starting a massive project to try and create a floating city. So that's there. And basically, if you want a sure thing, just push anything the WEF is pushing, the World Economic Forum. That's the easiest way to get funding these days. If your idea is ESG'd up, then you're going to get funding. You're going to get, it's a nice tailwind behind yourself. So whether you like it or not, the causes that they talk about are good, but it's the underlying way they go about it which is really shitty.